people are more important than products. People are more important than profit.
Mm-hmm.
Those other things are good, but people are more important than both.
Do you feel the pressure to grow your business, but doing so feels a bit like drowning? Welcome to Slow Growth Business, the show for business owners and leaders to quiet the noise and lead your business to success, one day at a time, slow and steady. If you feel your business is running you and you're ready to run it, you've come to the right place. Now, here are your hosts, business coaches Jimmy DeGroot and me, Kyle Bullock.
Jimmy, I want to do something a little bit different on this podcast episode because I got some sad news at the time of this recording from over the weekend. A friend of mine in the jewelry business who does sales all over the country selling to jewelers like me. We share a mutual friend. Our mutual friend's name was Ted Beavis. This guy reached out to me to let me know that our dear friend Ted passed away over the weekend. He lived a wonderful and sweet life. I want to talk about him for just a minute. Why I want to bring him up on this podcast, Slow Growth Business Podcast. Because Ted was a unique soul. A little bit of context. Again, for those who listen, among many things that I do, I own a jewelry store. That was the industry that I was raised in. My father's the third generation. I'm the fourth. He's been doing it his whole life. And so when I was a teenager, he brought me into learning the business. 15, 16, 17 years old when I got my start learning the business. And I want to talk today about the salespeople and the influences in our career that have left a special mark on us. So you can be thinking about who that was for you, Jimmy.
Sure.
Because I think what it can do for our listeners is remind them that when you do it right, there's extraordinary power in sales that lasts. We do the Slow Growth Business Podcast because we're trying to expand your mind to think about the long-term success of your career or your business over a lifetime. And Ted, to me, is an example of a person who did that to me. And it left such an impression on me that not a year of my career has gone by where I haven't thought about Ted's influence on my life. And so out of respect for a dear friend, I hope you don't mind entertaining that. I want to just share what Ted did for me that shaped my career. And then the lessons that perhaps we can get from that. And maybe you have someone in mind who's done that for you.
Yeah.
So Ted was a salesman. Ted sold wholesale jewelry to my dad. They were one of our number one suppliers for many years. Back in those days, they were called delivery lines. Delivery lines were very popular back in the day because you'd go to the jewelry booth, go to the show, the trade show, and they would just lay the jewelry out in front of you. And then you would pick each individual piece that you wanted. And that was the piece you're going to get. So it was on delivery. That's the piece I'm going to take home with me. So Ted had one of these delivery lines. Now, when I was 16, my dad started taking me to trade shows to go do the buying with him. So he was showing me how he bought the jewelry that would go up in our showcases. So we would work with a number of different companies, picking out the different jewelry that we're going to be selling. And he was teaching me how to do this. There was not a lot of teenagers on the show floor in those days. There was not an industry that was welcoming new blood.
No,
so
it was old men.
A lot of old men, a lot of old white men sitting around picking jewelry, So at 16 years old, I would go to the booth with these people. I was learning statistics and math and business from my dad. And I was beginning to kind of understand a little bit what's going on. And I would never forget that most of the time, 90% of the time, I would be sitting there. They would show the jewelry in the delivery line. They would talk straight to my dad. And it was like I didn't exist. They would look right past me. They might say like, oh yeah, hey kid, whatever.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, my dad would try to involve me and teach me. But the salesperson selling the stuff, it was like I was nothing.
Right.
And I got this message, big, bold, clear message. You're a kid. You don't know what you're doing. I'm talking to the man who has the answers in the pocketbook. So whatever, except for Ted. Ted was one of the only men in the business who, when we sat there, he would put the jewelry out in front. My dad would start working. And I'll never forget Ted leaning back in his chair, and he would look at me and he would talk to me like an adult. He'd talk to me like a human. He'd be genuinely interested in my life, in my interests, in my opinions of the jewelry. And then when I would go back the next year at 17, he'd pick up the conversation right where we left off. He remembered what I was interested in. He remembered that, oh, you're actually going to go to school for psychology? Oh, tell me about that. He would talk to me about, he would treat me like a human being. And he was one of the only people in the industry who did that. And the way that he sold was he would lean back and he would just let us look, let us think, let us do our thing. And every once in a while he'd say, well, here's a piece that you might want to think about. It's done well. Or have you thought about this one? Because he listened to us and he knew what we wanted and how we wanted to be treated. And he treated us the way that we wanted to be treated. And my entire life growing up in the business, and up until only a few years ago when last time I got to see Ted, he did that every single time. He listened to me and he treated me like a human. He treated my staff like that. He would send chocolates to one of my team members for Valentine's Day because he knew it would cheer her up, and he had a conversation with her about that. And he didn't want her to feel lonely on Valentine's Day. And she's never forgotten that. She tells that story to everybody.
Wow.
Here's why I wanted to talk about Ted on today's podcast. Ted taught me real salesmanship, when done right, is that you help people by solving the problem that they have, and that you treat them with such kindness and respect that they leave remembering how you made them feel, not what you sold them.
Yeah.
There were some pieces that I think we bought from Ted that were just god-awful ugly.
Sure.
And most of them sold, but some didn't. Even as you hear me now, I remember how Ted made me feel.
Yeah.
And
I know how he's making me feel, just you telling me the story.
Yeah. And because there's not a lot of salesmen like that in the world, right? You've been there.
Yeah. Well, here's one of the things that inspires me about that is we do a tremendous amount of sales training. Okay. And I know when it all comes down to it, it is not a linear step-by-step process. You can boil it down that way if you want. But to Ted, it came so naturally because he truly cared about you. It's kind of like in the Bible when they say the greatest of faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. My father always said, when you love somebody, everything else gets fixed. All the problems get fixed. And when you throw love at a problem and you ask, is this really exhibiting love? And if it is, then the problem will go away. Ted didn't have to think about what Dale Carnegie taught him about sales. He didn't need to think about a step-by-step process. He just wanted to talk to that kid, and everything else took care of itself because he truly cared for you, your father, your family, your store, and everybody attached to it. And what are you going to do then? You're always going to do the best. You're going to do the best you can for them. They're going to do the best they can for you. That's wonderful. And it's really what it all comes down to.
Yeah. As I remember the life of a dear friend of mine in the business, what I hope our listeners get, again, the whole theme here of slow growth business is really the impact that we make over a long period of time. And the impact of a single life over his lifetime to many people, to me is one of them, was profound. And I want to honor him by talking about him in this way and encourage our listeners that you really don't have a clue just how deep of an impact you can make when you take the moment to love the way you just described it, Jimmy. I was 16. I didn't really get to work with Ted when I came into the business because by that point he had kind of retired already. What I have gotten to do is work with the people that Ted mentored in his business, who I still cherish. And I've never, again, not a year has gone by where I have not thought about Ted and how he made me feel.
Right.
And I've seen, and you've seen, in fact, we just had this story told to us recently at a trade show. When people go to work with a B2B business, someone who's doing a wholesale or even retail, and they don't feel like they're treated like a human, where like they're looked right past as though they don't exist. How horrible that makes some people feel, and they will literally just up and walk away. On the flip side of that, what Ted taught me is just how deep an impact you can make when you just kind of get the product away for a minute and you look at the person. And I think, honestly, he helped inspire something that I've said as a tenant in my profession and my business that I hope that I can embody out of respect for him. People are more important than products. People are more important than profit. Those other things are good, but people are more important than both. And as long as we love with patience and kindness in every single sale, and we extend that to the people who work for us, I think the impact that you can make in a single lifetime is extraordinary.
Absolutely. We purchased a store up in Wausau called Jim Kreshock Jewelers, which is still thriving today, like amazingly. But he was the watch guy in town. And everybody loved him. And when he passed away, shortly after he sold the business and turned it over to us, people were lined up down the street at his funeral.
Mm.
And you couldn't fit him in the church. It was that full. This guy was so loved. One of the things that I noticed when I met him and what was amazing is when he was sitting at the watch bench as a semi-retired, mostly retired person, right? But still wanted to come to this store. He's at the watch bench and he's caring for these watches that are so important to these people. They would come into the store and he'd get up from the watch bench and he'd put his suit coat on and go over and talk to them. And it was never business. It was always what's going on with Katie at school and things like that. I had a few salespeople like that. A salesperson that was very important to me, still around today. His name was Dorel, Dorel. He would show you his line. It just took your breath away. Gotta have some of this stuff. It's just incredible. He did very little talking. He just, oh, this is a very nice piece, But anyway, then we'd go to dinner and we'd have a fantastic dinner and everything was all about the family and you just wanted to do business with this person. I love that scenario in life where if you truly love people and you always say, by the way, the scenario that Kyle's talking about was we asked what do people hate about the car buying process? And it's the typical one of the salesmen just talks to the man, doesn't even talk to the wife, but the wife is probably going to write the check for it. Anyway, so that was the classic scenario and we all get that. Gosh darn it. I just love celebrating when people get it.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of store I want to operate. That's the kind of store I want to be involved in. I don't want to be involved in a store where people are just following a list and saying rote things to customers to try to get them to buy that closing statement. You need it, but if you've got the right attitude, you shouldn't have to even know you need it. It's gonna be automatic.
Well,
you always get me on these rabbit trails. I can keep going forever. Sorry.
Well,
yeah.
Thank you for letting me share about my friend. And here's I like to leave people with something to do. I'm sitting here trying to think if I got to do it. It's really one of the most meaningful things you can do to people that you have looked up to in your life. Think about your heroes, the people that we're talking about, the people who have had deep impact or influence on your life that you look up to and that have done that to you. Thank them for it. Thank them specifically for what they contributed to you and how they contributed to your success. We don't really get to do that. And there's nothing more valuable that you can offer someone who has given something meaningful to you on that deep level than to say, this is the impact you've made and I look up to you and I admire you. As one mentor has taught me, tell your heroes that they have been your hero. You will never, ever, and I have never, ever, ever, ever regretted telling someone that for their impact. And I'm sitting here trying to think if I had that chance with Ted. And I'll end the story with this because I did. It was the last time that Ted was able to travel. This was a few years ago. He had decided he wanted to come see us. He had retired, gone on his way. One of his proteges, his name is Mark. Mark was going to come through our area and Ted found out. He's like, I want to come with you. And he came. And I remember seeing him walk through the store and I just a big beaming smile. And we sat down and it was just like old times and Mark's showing me the line and Ted's just talking to me. And I got a chance to tell him, thank you. You taught me how to do this. Yeah. And I hope that I can honor you doing that. So if you're listening to this, you've probably got a Ted out there who taught that to you in your field, in your business. I hope you do. And if you have, if they're still living, please don't take another moment. Just text them, call them, thank them. I miss my friend Ted, but I'm glad I got my chance to say that before he passed.
We talk to a lot of retailers, of course, and so a lot of you may be retailers listening to us. One of the saddest things that we get all excited about a line or we get excited about a brand, whatever it is, because we got that guy or that gal that we met at the show. And it's just sad when we see them, they leave the company because we lost our guy or our gal in the company. I just wish we could have companies that would be able to think bigger. Really, what's the word I'm thinking of? Foster that ability to be a TED for somebody. I don't know whether it's less pressure on sales or what it is, or maybe it's some type of training, sensitivity training. I don't know what it is, but all I mean to say here is the world needs more TEDs. We love TEDs, especially in the retail business. You know, if you got a TED in your store because customers keep coming in every day and asking for TED or Theodora.
Well, you know where it starts is our listeners. So if you're listening to this, go be a TED.
Go be a TED.
And Ted, this one goes out to you. I appreciate you, and I thank you for your impact me over all these years. How about that?
Amen.
We hope you leave this episode a little better than when you first began. If you'd like more resources to grow your business slow, steady, and consistently, check out our on-demand video catalog at trainretail.com. Or if you have a question or frustration we can help address in your business, write to us about it. We love to help solve big, ugly problems. So hit us up at kyle@trainretail.com or jimmy@trainretail.com. Good luck out there, and we will see you next time.